NFL Top 10 Power Ranking Week 3 edition. Ladies and gentlemen, we are already into the Week 3 of the NFL season. Now, we do these every single week, and it is a few hours, very short, about 2 hours away from Thursday Night Football with the Jets and the New England Patriots. So by the time you're watching this, more than likely that game will have kicked. So hopefully the Jets don't prove me wrong. This is last week's, so this is week 2. Now, remember, this is a fluid list. So we did our preseason top 10, and then each week we slightly alter the top 10. It's not a who was best this week or who is best next week. It's just an ever-flowing kind of top 10 ranking of the NFL landscape. Now this week, I will say, this week is probably one of the more difficult weeks I've had to power rate because of the parity in the NFL. This is the most parity I can remember in the NFL in a long, long time. This is the only time in NFL history we have not had a 10-point favorite by week 3. Okay, so the top team and about the 15th team are pretty close. And there's probably about 16 teams in the NFL right now that I think maybe aren't Super Bowl teams per se, but can absolutely compete for the conference. I mean, if you talk about like even a team like the Cardinals, the Cardinals are not probably certainly not a preseason top 20 team, but right now they are playing pretty damn good. The Steelers, the Steelers are a team that no one would think about playing pretty damn good. And then some teams that were top 10, like the Ravens, or are top 10, are playing awful, seemingly, right? They're 0-2, they're winless. The Bengals, 0-2, winless, right? So we're going to break this whole thing down. I have DVOA. We're going to talk about with some teams and also have some box scores I want to show y'all. So let's go ahead and do this. So this is it from last week, okay? If y'all want to watch the videos, they're all on the channel to see kind of how the algorithm and whatever. So let's go ahead into this week, all right? So the Bengals should have won against the Chiefs. It was a fake box score, but they lost. And like we said last week, it's a bit of a loser leaves town match. So I'm forced to drop the Bengals. Okay, the Rams, so many injuries, have to drop them. The Cowboys got absolutely smoked against the Saints. Absolutely smoked. All right, so let's just kind of let them linger. Okay, let's just let them linger for a second. So now some other teams that are worth talking about. The Saints, obviously at this point they cannot be ignored. Okay, who else are we talking about? We're talking about the Bills. Okay, Bills have been good. Talking about the Seahawks. All right, Seahawks have been good, right? The Buccaneers, they've been good, right? Okay, now let's look at the teams that are on this list already. It's crazy because the Chiefs are 1, but they didn't necessarily look great against Cincy. They should have lost, so I didn't upgrade them, nor did I downgrade them. They stay at 1. Detroit lost, but fake box score. The Niners, the Ravens lost, fake box score. Okay, the Eagles lose. The Eagles have to get dropped. Bad performance there. The Jets win, kind of a whatever win, so the Jets stay there. Let's talk about what I mean by a fake box score, because this is something that gets people really confused. There is such a thing as a bad win, and there is such a thing as a good loss. Okay, so let's look at the Buccaneers-Lions. Pretend you don't know the score, even though it's right there on the screen. Look at what happened in the game. The Lions had more yards by 250. All right, so outgained the Bucs by 250. They ran they ran 30, quick math here. They ran 36 more plays. All right. The Bucs were 2 for 10, 20% on third down. The Lions had a 1-yard advantage in yards per play. The Lions had a 5.1 yards per rush to the Buccaneers 3. And they were -1 in the turnover, but they also had way more time in possession. If you just look at this, it's like the Lions definitely won this game. I mean, they won in every single fashion. Like the 1 turnover difference is not that big of a deal when you factor in all these other stats. But what was the big deal in this game? Right here, 1 for 7 in the red zone. Right there. So it's like you can't downgrade Detroit that much because they did perform pretty well. The only thing they didn't perform very well in was the final score. But they did dominate this game. So when I say a fake box score, that's what I mean. I'll show you the Ravens one as well. So take the score out. Who do you think won this game? You have the Ravens have more first downs. The Ravens have outgained the Raiders. The Ravens have 6.1 yards per play to 4.3, so almost a +2 yards per play. All right. Yards per rush. The Ravens had 5.6 yards per rush, and the Raiders had 1.6. You look at time of possession, virtually the same. Turnovers are usually the indicator. Like usually turnovers is the great equalizer. In this one, turnovers are the same. So if you look at this, how the hell did the Raiders win this game? You know, like if you look at this stat, usually if one team has 5.6 yards a carry and one team has 1.6, you know who won the game. You couple that with the yards per play, you couple that with the total yards, you couple that with the first downs, you couple that with the total plays. It's like, yeah, the Ravens won this game, but the final score shows something else. So this is another one where it's like, yeah, it's a bad loss, it's at home, but you really can't knock them that much. So that's kind of how I do when I say a fake box score, that's what I mean. Is you got to dig further into it, even though you lose or even though you win, like the Buccaneers. Like they're on the other side of that, right? It's easy to say like, damn, Tampa Bay is good. They went into Detroit and won the game. But when you look at the box score, it's like, that's kind of an overvalued win. Like, yeah, they get credit for winning, but it's not like they went into Detroit and had this great performance like the Saints. Like the Saints box score, they went into Dallas and dominated. That was not a fake box score at all. So you got to give the Saints a ton of credit for that. I don't give Tampa Bay a ton of credit for that win in Detroit. All right, so I had to move some stuff around to show you all the top 10 so far. Now here's the question. At 10, we've got Dallas, the Saints, the Seahawks, or the Eagles. All right, and one team is also going to go to 5. So right now we have the Kansas City Chiefs at number 1, Detroit Lions at number 2, San Francisco at number 3. The Texans get upgraded. Good win at home. They dominated the game. It shouldn't have been that close, but good win regardless. The Texans, legitimate team. CJ Stroud, absolute superstar. They move up to 4. The Ravens drop again. You do drop them because of the loss, but it's nothing crazy. The Jets stay totally still. Totally still. I don't upgrade them or downgrade them for that win. The Bills look pretty good. Now, the Bills they're doing some things I don't like. They're running the ball way too much on first down, whatever, but it's working. It's working right now, so you have Josh Allen. We'll see what happens there. The Buccaneers slide in at 9. All right, the Bucs, I have a feeling they will not be remaining at 9 for very long, but they have had a good start to the season. I have them at 9. At 10, it's not the Cowboys, it's not the Seahawks, and it's not the Saints. So the Eagles drop all the way from 5 to 10. Now, admittedly, this might be a bit of an overreaction because if you think about the Falcons game, if they don't blow the game at the end with the the field goal and all that stuff, they probably don't drop. They probably drop to 6, and the Saints probably go to 5, but they certainly don't drop to 10, right? So am I overweighting the fact that they lost? Maybe, but if you look at the box score, the Falcons deserve to win the game. So I'm okay with that. And another reason why I did this, the same reason with Cincinnati, is because this is a loser leaves town match for Philly, where I think they're going to get boat raced by the Saints. So it's basically like I'm giving Philly one last chance to look good. They have some issues. A.J. Brown's out, obviously. Another reason I have Philly there is that I do wait. My honorable mention would be Seattle. Seattle's the 11. But I do give Philly a little bit of credit for being a division champion. I think they come out of the East, and I think Seattle's the second best team in the NFC West. So that's kind of like the tiebreaker. So this is your top 10. Chiefs, Lions, Niners, Texans, Saints, Ravens, Jets, Bills, Bucks, and the Eagles. And I also kind of think about the betting market too. Like right now, the Saints are definitely playing better than like the Lions. But if the Saints and Lions played on a neutral field, the Lions would be favored. So I do respect that a little bit, like the Jets and Bills. The Jets and the Bills, if they were playing on a neutral field, it would probably be a pick 'em, maybe Jets, maybe minus 1. I doubt it. More likely a pick 'em, something like that. If the Ravens were playing the Jets, the Ravens would be favored. So I also kind of cross-reference with the betting market as well. The Saints are interesting because they go from unranked to 5. I still think right now they're under the Lions and the Niners in the NFC, but I think they're obviously better than the Cowboys and the Eagles, and I would have the Saints as better than Seattle as well. So, the Saints Ravens situation, like on a neutral, Baltimore might still be favored. The Saints were 6-point dogs at Dallas, and the Ravens are 1-point favorites at Dallas. So that is telling you that last week the Ravens are, last week the market would have had this as like a 7-point difference or 6-ish point difference in these teams. But obviously this week's a little different after what New Orleans did to Dallas. So we looked at those box scores. We explained the fake box scores. Let's look at DVOA. So I like DVOA because it weights everything. It's not just like the shallow stats that Ben Kurt uses that claim that the Carolina Panthers were a top 5 defense last year. So DVOA this would be their top 10. Now, this is strictly right effing now is how DVOA works. There's no preconception of how good a team is. There's no Patrick Mahomes is on this team versus it is strictly a how good is a team playing up until this moment. All right. So some teams are benefiting from an easier schedule, right? Like the Chiefs played the Ravens and the Bengals. The another like the teams that have played Carolina, the Saints and the Chargers, like they obviously benefit from that, right? So Seattle played Denver. So right now they have the Saints 1, Seahawks 2, Chargers 3, Minnesota 4. Minnesota's another team where they're a confusing team. And they're a confusing team to rank as well. How good truly is Minnesota? Some people, I would argue, if I did some honorable mentions, Minnesota is probably something. It's probably something like this. It would be like Seattle 11, Minnesota 12, Cincinnati 13. Then you'd probably have like Green Bay, Dallas, Arizona, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Colts would probably round it out, and then you can mix and match some of these other teams. But then they have Houston at 5, they have Buffalo at 6, they have Arizona at 7, they have Pittsburgh at 8, they have Baltimore at 9, they have Detroit at 10. All right, if you look at offensive DVOA, so the best offenses so far this year, you got New Orleans 1, Buffalo 2, Green Bay 3. Baltimore 4, Arizona 5, Seattle 6, Philly 7, might be surprising. Atlanta 8, San Francisco 9, Indianapolis 10. Defensively, the Chargers are 1, Minnesota 2, New Orleans 3, Houston 4, Seattle 5, Pittsburgh 6, Chicago 7, also might be surprising. Buffalo 8, and Tennessee might be surprising. Was there a tie? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, no. Tennessee 9, and then Detroit 10. For a second, I thought we had double numbers. And then that's total DVOA, right? So then, of course, you can get deeper into it, like with offensive DVOA. You can get into like pass rankings, you can get into rush rankings. You know how it is. So, like right now, the best passing offense is the Bills. The worst passing offense is Carolina, Cleveland, Chicago, Denver. Rushing wise, the worst rushing is the Raiders. So the Raiders right now have the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th worst, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like the Raiders beat the Ravens, but right now the Raiders have the 20. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th worst passing offense. All right, hold on a second. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 9th worst passing offense and the number 1 worst rushing offense. So you look at something like that and you're like, well, it sounds cool that we beat the Ravens, but it doesn't sound cool the other side of it. On this one, you've got the defensive DVOA. So the best pass defense right now is the Chargers. The worst pass defense is the Commanders, the Broncos, the Dolphins, the Colts, the Giants. the Rams, the Panthers. The worst rush defense is the Eagles, then the Cowboys, then the Colts, then aren't the Colts the... So the Colts right now are the fourth worst passing defense and the third worst rushing defense. So if you're an Indianapolis fan, you got a big defense problem, a huge defense problem. Okay, so Philly, Dallas, Indy, the Rams, Vegas having trouble stopping the run. Carolina, obviously, the Jets. Now the Jets are a big one, okay, because if it wasn't for my preseason ranking, I wouldn't have the Jets in the top 10, obviously. And their DVOA reflects that. So the whole thing this year was that the Jets defense, coming into this year, was that the Jets defense is sweet, right? Well, if you look at DVOA, the Jets have performed really poorly. Right now, they have performed as the 23rd ranked defense. That ain't good, because the Jets are supposed to be a top 10, maybe the number one defense in the NFL. Pro Football Focus before the season had them as the number one defensive line, the number one linebacking core, and the number one secondary. This was supposed to be like almost a generational defense. The fact that they are down here blows all that up. All right, let's look at their pass defense is 22nd. And their rush defense is, where is it? Is 26. So, I mean, you've got the 26th rush defense and whatever it was, the 22nd pass defense. That has to change. That has to change. If they struggle tonight against the Patriots, especially if they lose, they're out of the top 10, 100%, because they're being buoyed right now by this like preseason expectation. Rodgers does look relatively healthy, but if their defense keeps playing like that, they cannot remain in the top 10. So it'll be interesting to monitor the Jets. It'll be interesting to monitor the Bucks coming off of a Fugazi win, and then the Eagles, kind of a last stand situation here in the top 10. But there's a ton of parity because, would you be surprised if the NFC Championship game is Detroit versus Green Bay? I wouldn't. Would you be surprised if the AFC Championship game is Kansas City versus Cincinnati? I wouldn't. It's deep. It is really deep how good the NFL is right now. There's not a real standout top team. I mean, right now, and that's another part of it too, like right now, there are standout top teams. But those teams are the Saints. Those teams are Minnesota. It's like these unranked teams in the preseason, so those teams are skyrocketing up the board. Like New Orleans, I think I had them like 17 or something like that preseason. So they've gone from that to 5. Minnesota probably would have been, I probably would have had them like 20, 25 or something, and they've now skyrocketed to 12. Meanwhile, teams like Philly go from, some people had Philly as like the 1 seed in the NFC. And now they're about to drop out of the top 10 when New Orleans smokes them on Sunday. So it's a really interesting NFL season so far. And what I would tell you is, be careful of the overreaction. Like Cincinnati, we talked about this in week 2. Cincinnati loses to the Patriots. Horrible loss, right? And a lot of people were like, how in the world can they still be in your top 10? And then you see them play the Chiefs, and it's like, well, okay, they're obviously, all right, I see. So you got to be careful with the knee-jerk kind of thing. I know it's crazy to see the Ravens at 0-2 at 6, but again, we explained the box score. We explained all that. And like if you look at offensive DVOA, so look at offensive DVOA here. If you weight it, and weight kind of takes out some of the variables, the Ravens have the 4th best offense in the NFL, and the weighted defense, and the 19th ranked defense. So they struggled defensively. I'll say that. They good run defense, trouble stopping the pass. It looks like so the 8th best rush defense, 19th best pass defense. So when you look at those numbers, it's like, okay, that's not an 0-2 team, right? Like that's not that probably should be a top 10 team. Let's see what they have them in the. Yeah, so 9. So yeah, exactly. So if you look at that DVOA, you add all that together, that's a top 10 team. I had them a little higher. Like I think Baltimore's better than Pittsburgh, and I think Baltimore's better than Arizona. I think if Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and these odds are probably up right now, but I think if Baltimore and Pittsburgh played tomorrow, Baltimore would be favored probably on the road at Pittsburgh. So like DVOA is a computer model, so you get to factor some stuff in. Like they have Kansas City as the 18th best team right now. Obviously, Kansas City is not the 18th best team. Like obviously, I mean they have New England ahead of Kansas City. Obviously, Kansas City is better than New England, right? So the computer model isn't perfect, and that's why we kind of blend it. So this is my top 10 going into week 3, going into Thursday Night Football. Chiefs, Lions, 49ers, Texans, Saints, Ravens, Jets, Bills, Bucks, Eagles. Honorable mention, 11 Seahawks, 12 Vikings, 13 Bengals. And then the rest are all kind of jumbled up. We would have to go through that. So as far as the worst, if you're wondering, the worst would be like the Giants, the Broncos, wherever they are, the Broncos, Giants, Commanders, Panthers. Panthers with Dalton, I think, are a little bit better than some of these teams. They're a little bit better than they seem. Right now, I'd probably have it like this. Right now, I'd probably have the Giants are the worst team in the NFL. Panthers are the second worst. Broncos third worst. Commanders fourth worst. Probably how I have it. So there you go. Get on down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Give me your top 10. What's your top 10? Again, we do this every single week, and we'll keep doing it throughout the season. So you'll see kind of the fluidity of how stuff goes. Like the Jets. Like sometimes a win is unimpressive. Sometimes a loss is impressive, and sometimes you balance it out and they just stay the same. The Jets come off of a win. Win was not inspiring. It was kind of a fake win. They probably should have won more by like 3 points versus 7 points, but I won't get into the minutia of how you do all that. So they just stay the same. Even though the Ravens lose, like it's not as simple as, Jets win, so they go up 1. Ravens lose, so they go down 1. It's not that simple, right? So there you go. All right, cool. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. I don't think I found it. I like Ramondre Stevenson's rushing carries over. I was looking for a 15.5. I don't think I found it. I think all I saw was 16.5, so I don't think I have a play on the game. I would lean Patriots plus 6.5. Might be closing at 6. I know it was 6.5 earlier in the week. I was hoping to get a 7. At 7, I love the Patriots. Under 7, I probably won't play it. And that's about it. I have Garrett Wilson and Ramondre Stevenson on my fantasy team, so I'll be watching that as well. And then I thought about the Jets for Survivor. I know people play Survivor and are interested in that, but it's a bad scheduling spot. I think this is the Jets. Well, I know this is the Jets. I don't think, ladies and gentlemen, I know. This is the Jets' third game in 10 days with cross-country travel. That's brutal. That is a crazy schedule. And a lot of people are like, well, isn't it the Patriots' third game in 11 days? Totally different. Like when the Jets had to go to San Francisco, then they had to turn around, fly back. Like you throw all that in there. Really crazy schedule. But it'll be a fun game. It'll be a great game to watch. And I'm interested to see if the Jets can start to put it together. Like, can they kind of look a little bit more like the Jets that we thought before the season? Or maybe the defense just isn't that good. And defense is probably the one thing. Defense is, I think, year over year, defense changes the most. Like the best defense in the NFL, and it goes by position too. Like the best defensive back in the NFL, he can be the defensive player of the year. The next year, he can be just getting burned all over the place and out of the league. We see it all the time. I mean, we see it with linebackers. We see it with defensive backs where they are an absolute all-pro one year. The next year, they can't get on the field. So, like the Jets, last year defense, pretty much the same people brought back. Nothing. Browns, last year defense, sweet. This year, nothing. It happens. So defense is one of those things where when you hear someone say like, oh, this team has a great defense, preseason, they got to show it. They got to show it quick, because if the Jets don't do anything defensively that's impressive against the Patriots and they stay in this like low 20s, that's tough. That's a bad sign. That's a real bad sign. So, all right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Top 10 from me. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Get on down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.